So I've got a little project that I'm going to do here to fill in until I start the next larger project. And I had purchased this hardware from Tools for Working Wood a couple of months ago. And on their site they have plans and drawings for a bow saw or turning saw. And I don't have a decent coping saw, so I thought I would put this together and do it. So I've got the full-size drawings here, and then Doug Mulder left me some of his hickory behind. He was over using the shop to mill up this lumber for his mini workbench that he put together. So you don't need too much wood. This particular bow saw calls for a 2 1-foot pieces that are 12 inches long. You can see I traced it out here, and then the centerpiece is 13 inches, so I've got more than enough lumber. This particular one piece is almost quarter sawn, so I'm going to start with that, and I have to mill it down to 23/32, which is just under 3/4 of an inch, and then bandsaw out the rough shapes and then do some shaping. So we'll get started with it. So the wood is milled to the correct thickness now. I left it a little thick. It's 3/4 of an inch, so it's 32nd of an inch too thick, but obviously when we do the shaping, then we'll bring it down. And I'm going to carefully cut this out along the line and then use this one for a template for the second one. Well, I've got the 3 pieces roughed out here, so the next thing to do is to, well, I guess I could put the mortises in next, and then do this. So there's a mortise and tenon joint at either end here, so I think that's what's next. So I put a tenon onto the end of this center stretcher here. And according to the plans, it was a 1/4 inch by 5/8 of an inch long, 1/4 inch deep, and a 1/4 inch wide. So I also put a radius onto the edge of the tenon here, and I used a large circle to put that radius on there. Then I mortised the ends here, 3/8 of an inch deep, 1/4 inch wide, and 5/8 of an inch long to match. And then I lettered them so that I could remember which ends match. So when I shape this, I'll bring this shoulder down to match in here perfectly. But this mortise and tenon is not glued because it needs to move, rock, obviously, when you stretch that across there. Also, I drilled a 1/4 inch hole through the center of the bottom here while it was still square before I start to shape the two. So now I think the next thing to do is to start the shaping process. So this is where we left off the last time, and so I had cut out the mortises here, and we have the 1/4 inch tenons. So I haven't done any shaping to the frame at all yet, but I did drill the holes, which we saw in the last video, and then I epoxied the pins into the handles. And so I thought I would assemble it here and see how it worked, you know, particularly with the joint here in the center before I did all of the hard work of shaping it. So I have some jute twine here that's more traditional, so I'm going to give it a couple of wraps around here and then tie a knot in it, and then I need to toggle for the center before I can tighten it up. So I've got to make that toggle next. So I'm making the toggle for the, and I'm making it a little wider. They need only 1/2 inch. This is 5/8, and I'm using the hand plane to add the taper from the end. I've got it marked with a little bit of the line there, so we can see it. That doesn't look too bad. The bump right there, but we can get rid of that. So a little more shaping to do. Well, I've roughed out the toggle, and I went to the hardware store and picked up a little bit of jute, twisted jute, which would be somewhat period-like. So I used a double square knot here, and I'm not sure it's going to hold, but anyway, I've given it about 4 or 5 twists. Now it's going to change, obviously, when this gets narrower. So, you know, it's going to have to be adjusted again, but I've got a reasonable amount of tension on it right now, and we may test it out with cutting here shortly, but this is the stage where I think we're ready for testing. I made this a little wider than the design. They had a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch design. This is 5/8 inch wide by a 1/2 inch thick, the toggle it is. So next for the shaping, I'm reasonably happy with where it's at the moment, so we'll move on to the next step.